Hi, everyone. So I'm here with Geo Kanegawa, the Executive Director of Jewish Youth for Community Action, aka JYCA. Geo, how are you today?
I am doing extremely well. I have flowers in my living room. I'm going to play with flowers after this, finish up my work before I head off to vacation. So I'm really glad this is one of the last things I get to do, which is an incredibly joyful thing to do. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. And we're really glad to have you here too. Um, so for over 26 years, which an incredibly long time, almost all of my lifetime, JICA has engaged Jewish youth ages 14 to 18 in movements for social justice by creating a joyous, multiracial community where young people develop innovative leadership and organizing skills, facilitate socio-political learning, and run action campaigns. One thing that's really unique about you all's programming is that focus on youth. So can you tell us a little bit about the power you're building by organizing specifically young people?
Yeah, absolutely. So some things that are really incredible about building youth power are the impact on the youth that we're working with, for them to be able to practice their autonomy and approaching organizing through their creativity and innovation. Especially because many of our youth spent most, if not all, of their high school experience during the lockdown, that this has had a huge impact on their personal development and interpersonal relationships. So being able to take ownership of their lives and in community as they reemerge into this transforming world we're finding ourselves in has been really special to support and witness. We have seen youth across the country radically approach organizing by challenging the status quo in very loud ways and really exciting ways. And this is really dope to ground in the understanding that youth power is most effective in large numbers and through strong relationships. Right now, we are helping youth understand that their power is uniquely potent, and it must draw on the work of leaders. And so I think a lot of youth power is intergenerational power. And especially by drawing on the work of leaders, especially BIPOC leaders who have come before them. So, as part of building youth power, we focus on community building internally, coalition building externally, and then practicing collective care through this relational landscape because this is what will sustain our movements for future generations continuing this work. And I think right now we often hear the need to burn all the systems down. Our youth are really radical and they're like, yeah, burn it down. Which, yes, of course, burn and abolish these oppressive systems. And we must think about what comes next. And so our power comes from youth being presently active and engaged while understanding where our movements come from and who they come from, and then where what our goals are to ground in our pursuit of Olam Haba.
Yeah, and so JICA sort of grounds the youth, you might say, in three different programs, right, within the Bay Area. Uh, LGIT, legit, that was my guess of how that's pronounced,
Yeah.
leadership group in training, uh, OG, organizing group, and JAM, Jews Against Marginalization. Can you tell us a little bit about what youth do in each of these programs?
Yes, absolutely. These three programs have been our programs. Though I will say that this coming year, we have actually decided to focus on only JAM and OG. Our organization has decided to discontinue Legit, which was a difficult and necessary decision to fit within our capacity and just the reality of our organization right now. And also seeing that there's a lot more need to be in focus on JAM and OG. So then this decision enables us to continue building out JAM and making this program a lot more accessible for Jewish youth of color around the Bay Area and nationally coming soon, which I know we'll talk about later. And first, JAM is a place where a program where diaspora meets and identities integrate. And so this is where youth can learn from each other and uplift each other. Within this program, our Jewish social justice and program values include Tikkun Olam, intentional authenticity, belonging, rest, play, connection, and especially radical joy as a form of protest. And I can also get more into that later as why we really focus on that as part of this organization. And then in our organizing group program, we focus on building relationships within the group, discussing the connections between Judaism and social justice, creating opportunities for youth to learn more about themselves and how their experiences and identities play into their activist interest and leadership styles. And finally, engaging in social action projects together with clarity and confidence. We understand that these programs serve as foundations for their continued engagement in social justice movements after high school. So it's really an incredible place, and these programs are incredible opportunities for youth to, again, build the foundations and learn about themselves, learn about what it means to be in community, understand collective care, and just like get to be themselves, and then take these tools as they're building their toolbox to like go on and continue kicking ass in the world. Can I say
Right,
that?
because
I'm
this
so
is
sorry.
my no, no worries at all. We're very fun here at JLF. So so sort of to take my understanding of what you're saying, it's not just about building that foundation for their engagement, but building a foundation for them to feel empowered, right? Um,
Mhm,
like JICA follows a youth empowerment model. Um,
mhm.
can you tell me what that means, and specifically, what does empowering youth in this way allow you all to accomplish?
Yes, absolutely. So throughout this past year at JICA, we have actually developed a new patent pending youth-led model that is very different than our from our previous approaches to youth-led work. We have been grappling with the understanding of labor versus leadership and generally like just our valuation of labor. And I think that in previous models or in similar models, or I don't know, just like other models of youth leadership, really doesn't disaggregate labor from leadership and kind of like keeps them in one. But at JICA, we're like, hey, what if we didn't extract free youth labor? And what if we were actually empowering them by way of centering their agency and honoring their capacity? Um, and this is where then staff take on the labor while youth lead with their innovative ideas. And this helps us then accomplish um, I guess like just radical approaches to how we approach social justice work. Um, yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I think I got a little mixed up there. But another thing that we do with our youth is ask how they want us, the adults in their life, to show up for them. For example, some of my youth just want me to be a cool dude in their life hanging out. And others want me to show up as their cool older brother with like this air of like protection and silliness and I don't know, healthy broiness with the groundedness of their gay on. And if I am able, I would actually love to show you how we've created this youth-led model and maybe break down some of those steps for you, if that's of interest.
Please. Do you need to
Yes.
share a screen or?
Yes, please.
Okay, great.
Oh my goodness. All right, let's build that out, zoom that up. Can you see that?
Yes.
Awesome. So this is the JICA youth-led model. And there's a little note at the top that says, please note, the review and evaluation of this model will be done by implementing the model and fine-tuning. And so just like making the necessary adjustments as we go on. But basically, with this model, we start off with youth proposing a vision or staff proposing a vision, or sometimes them working collaboratively on offering a vision. And this is where then in step 2, staff take that vision and then they put in the labor of creating it, like actualizing it. This could look like, hey, I want to do a workshop on transformative justice. I'm going to lay down the foundations of how the arc of this workshop would look. And what principles and learnings we're going to integrate. And then we offer it to the youth. And something that's really unique about our youth-led model and general just kind of approach with working with youth is that we really value input, like active input over feedback. So this is then where it's like, this is what we have, but really like you can throw this away. And if you have something else that you're thinking of, like tell me, make a workhorse out of me essentially. And then we're in this fine tuning process that takes as many times as necessary as listed to refine. And we ground this conversation in values, namely our anti-racist values, which we can go into more staff work on it, give it back, again, fine tune. And then we reach this place of a veto opportunity. Step 5 will be the youth-led delegation based on their passion, expertise, and capacity. I should also add their needs. Then youth in that delegation, it's like, what do the youth want to lead on? And then what do the staff lead on? And then again, staff support all along the way, to make this a lot more accessible for youth, accommodating to the various kind of aspects that would maybe impose a barrier or just kind of play into their ability to complete this project. Then we have the action results. And then after that, we're like, okay, let's reflect on this. What were our learning points? What were the things that we did really well? And kind of maybe starting the process over again or starting something new again. I do have some more to say. I'll stop sharing my screen just because I am going to continue reading off of it. But yeah, sorry if you would like me to make it more concise. But some pieces that I wanted to kind of talk more about, I guess, as part of this youth-led model is, yeah, we're really big on our values, right? Like the values that we have and integrate as our Jewish social justice values, and then our general kind of like values as an organization, thinking about like, how are we really embodying it? How is the rubber hitting the road? How are we in practice of these rather than just like saying them to say nice things? Like what do we mean by these things? So really guiding our processes through a strong value structure. And when we hit the kind of veto opportunity in this process, we are able to see like, um, like, well, question like, why are we going to veto this? Should we offer an alternative? Should we move on entirely? We're still working out whether we want this to be consensus, majority, or if like, especially if it comes to like safety, then like it could be a unilaterally imposed decision where it's like, okay, like actually we should just shmew. And this is dependent on the access of information for feasibility, our budget, our values, our policies. And something that is really important that I want to name about this veto opportunity is the role of staff, and being able to kind of serve as guide rails when working with youth and empowering youth. I think it, on the one hand, it is incredibly important to center the agency of youth and meet them where they're at and let them, direct where we want to go. And it's important to recognize that youth, as well as ourselves, just everyone, is in a process of unlearning and relearning. And especially at JYCA, not especially at JYCA, but just at JYCA, we have youth who have varying amounts of privilege. And as a predominantly white group, of youth, as predominantly, yeah, we are thinking about like privilege. And so then we are also thinking about the ways in which we are maybe like coming into a project with like an approach of like saviorism or a perpetuation of violence, or just something that would make this project maybe be a no-go. And
Well,
so, yeah.
that's really a great time to transition to the next question, right? Which is asking, when you talk about that savior role and being predominantly white group, what the role of Jews of color, Sephardim, Mizrahim youth play in JICA. From my understanding, you're all really leaders in JOCSM youth programming, and you're planning on really expanding JAM as a part of that. Can you tell me a little more about how that process is going?
Yes, absolutely. Appreciate the wrap up. And it was a nice transition because we can focus on then celebrating JOC, SM, JOCSM safety. So one, thank you for saying that. That's very kind. I'm glad that we can be considered leaders in this area. And at JYCA, we strive to center the needs and experiences of our JOCSM youth, which means that we have had to reckon again with the ways in which privilege and positionality show up in our lives, as well as the ways in which we've been complicit in white supremacy culture. So in January, we initiated a group accountability conversation where youth were able to understand how privilege shows up in their lives and across identities. Staff facilitated this conversation, and I remember how nervous some of our JOC youth were. My goal was to facilitate this conversation in a way that made our youth feel safe and empowered to share their experiences. And we oriented this conversation as us against the problem, AKA the problem being oppressive systems, rather than us versus each other. And this conversation was incredibly generative. in that we kind of cultivated this container of collective growth and healing as a group. And we had this conversation because our Jewish youth of color advocated for it, which meant that we prioritized it. And all of that then to say that our work with JAM informs all aspects of our organization. And this year we have really focused on understanding what our Jewish youth of color need. We learned that they need to feel like they belong in all of our programs. And JAM is a very sacred space where our youth can be real and speak honestly about their experiences, where they can rest and decompress, where they can be, and what has been so special about this program is that we have done so much while doing, I guess, in like kind of standard measurements, so little. We find and value the radical in the micro, meaning that we find the radical in each moment of breath and joy. Again, going back to this idea of joy as a form of protest. And in a world that disconnects our youth from themselves and each other and like really leads with oppressive lensing, JAM is a place where our Jewish youth of color, our JYCA youth, they can come home and let their guard down and just, again, be.
Yeah, so following on that, it's not like JAM is just about being a space and just about programming, but all the things JICA is doing, these containers are creating a part of a larger strategic vision for racial justice and equity work. Can you tell me a little bit more about your strategy for creating this change that you actually want to see happen in the world beyond JICA?
Yes, absolutely. And appreciate you asking this question. To keep the answer short, we'll just hit on a couple of points as part of our strategic vision. But I guess I can start with where we are right now and what we are currently doing as part of our strategic vision and thinking long term is creating a supportive and sustainable environment for our organization where then JOC and BIPOC staff members, board members, and youth can feel comfortable, empowered, like they belong and have the power to make necessary changes in the organization. So currently, we are recruiting JOC and BIPOC leaders to our advisory board to center their insights and experiences, which then means that our policies and structures will reflect BIJOCSM community needs. Additionally, our programs will continue to center JOCSM youth and tend to their feelings of belonging and empowerment, informing within their like boundaries, labor boundaries, informing how our programs continue to develop to meet those needs. We are holding our board, team, and youth accountable to doing their internal work of unlearning and relearning through trainings and conversations about power, privilege, and positionality. This is a huge part of our strategic vision, is for folks to really reckon with themselves and do the internal work that is necessary. If we're all on this process of unlearning and relearning, we are able then to kind of meet each other where we're at and then keep each other accountable with love and respect to find our way forward. And finally, and hugely, we are building partnerships and coalitions with Jewish and non-Jewish organizations to become more integrated in the Bay Area racial justice ecosystem.
Awesome. Well, speaking of that, the ecosystems outside of our own Bay Area ecosystem, this month is also Pride Month. That's just something that's happening everywhere. And in this month's newsletter, we're uplifting queer and trans voices in the JLF community. I'd love to hear more. I know we've spoken a little bit about the BIJOCSM youth, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about the role queer and trans youth play in the JICA community and leadership.
Absolutely. So many of our youth across our programs identify as queer, and some of our youth identify as trans, non-binary, or gender non-conforming. The role of our queer and trans youth play in JICA is leading by example as their authentic selves. I think, well, one, we just had a Pride Gala recently. That was really special where we had a trans youth and a trans and queer youth and a queer youth lead this action around protective allyship, bringing awareness to the anti-LGBTQ bills that are circulating around the US right now. And one, just bringing light to like the fact that we have 491 bills, talking about the scope of these bills, and then the kind of long-term impact and consequence of our bills, and then us being able to really celebrate the history of queer and trans liberation and our ability to live freely as queer and trans folks in the Bay Area. Something else that we do as a tradition at JYCA is have gender euphoria fashion shows. And this is where our youth really play a crucial role of leading by example, where they're, dressing each other up, they're doing each other's makeup, they're strutting down the runway. And it's just this space of complete freedom and liberation in a very embodied way, where it's putting into practice what liberation could feel like and what could look like for us. It's quite literally making the world we want to see in this moment together. And I think them playing the role of leading by example is extremely important, and creating that safe space, maintaining and uplifting that safe space within our community is sacred.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And another thing that seemed really powerful, just within and beyond your community, when you all are going out into the world and getting youth ready to be able to be activists, right? We saw from your leadership training session, there was a photo of a youth with a Protect Trans Kids sign, which again, we're talking about all those bills you're talking about, and the attack that's been on trans kids and people in general, is something that's really profound. And from my understanding, that youth has a pretty exciting and cool story that we'd love to highlight.
Yeah, absolutely. This youth is an absolute superstar. He was actually the youth that I was just referring to in the previous question, where our youth were leading an action for LGBTQ plus rights, queer and trans liberation, and that facilitation piece. This youth in particular is the president of his GSA at his high school. And he's working on a really incredible campaign at his high school with the administrative staff to have more number and more accessible all gender restrooms available for youth. In addition, he has helped organize both youth in JYCA and youth at his own high school to participate in that nationwide walkout we saw a few months ago, where youth across the country in high school were walking out of their schools and going to specific centers in their respective cities and areas in protest to the anti-LGBTQ plus bills around the U.S. and specifically the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. He has been really vocal in his advocacy in really necessary ways that kind of motivate, shock people into being like, oh yes, we actually have to do something about this right now. And he, again, just generally is a superstar by way of F all this, and I'm going to make meaning out of my raging grief. I am mad and I am in pain and this is heavy, and I'm going to do something about this, and I'm going to make sure all of you do something about this too. And really just speaking to the power of, again, youth-led work, and especially the youth-led work that we're doing here at JYCA.
Awesome. Well, it's really been a pleasure, Geo. If anyone wants to follow along with that youth-led work that's so powerful that you were just telling us about, or get involved with your work, where should they go?
Oh, well, they should go to our JYCA website, where they can sign up for our newsletter and get updates about the exciting things that our organization is continuing doing, both within our work and internally as an organization, and then externally how we'll show up. And of course, have to plug or drop it of our Instagram, which is a really exciting place where, again, we're showing the different work that our youth are doing. We got some dope memes that are really funny and relatable, and kind of just helps you learn more about, again, JYCA as a whole, but in a more visual context and ongoing updated context.
And that Instagram handle is?
At JYCA Justice.
At JYCA Justice. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, Geo, and please have a lovely rest of your day.
You as well. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye now.